All right, welcome back, everyone. And this time we are looking at episode 8 for analyzing model outputs from Visum. We'll be covering basically three types of outputs analysis from Visum. One would be the graphical outputs, where you plot the results on the Visum network map and so forth. Then there are tabular outputs, where you can do listing tables and extract results in a tabular format for your models. And then we'll also discuss briefly Jupyter Notebooks with Python, because now this has become kind of a popular way to analyze and maintain model results and customize the type of outputs and summaries that you might want. All right, let's talk about some graphical outputs. One of the key graphical outputs of your model is typically link flow bandwidth. This might be for single or multi-class traffic flows. This also can be multi-class or single-class transit flows. The general way of getting to these graphic parameters in Visum is by using the graphics parameters and link bars menu. Then you can scale the width of those bars to the traffic flow. And then you can also classify the color coding of those bars or bandwidths by things like volume to capacity ratio and so forth. It's also possible to do some difference bars or difference charts in Visum, where if you're trying to compare counts versus assigned model flows and you want to see that in a heat map or that sort of a representation, you can set the graphics up to show you the difference bars as well. Now let's go into Visum and take a look at where all these menus are. Here's my base model. To look at any type of graphic in Visum, you go for Graphics and Edit Graphic Parameters. Here you have the ability to scale any different type of network objects. In this case, we look at links. And over here in links, you can see that we have the link drawing labels on the links, bars, which is your bandwidths, and then bar labels and isochrone drawings. So you can check on and off any of these layers that you want for your graphic. And you can also structure the drawing on how you'd like the drawing order to be developed. So over here, bar labels come on top, and then labels, and then isochrones and links sit on top of link bars. You can change this by selecting the item and then moving this to change the drawing order. Now let's look at link displays. We have the option of doing uniform or classified displays, as we've discussed in some previous sessions. In addition, we have link bars over here, which are typically used to show bandwidths. Here, you select link bars, and then if you want labels, you can check labels on or off, and then go to the display setting. Here, you can add one or more attributes from your link bar selection. So over here, let's say we want to display this daily link flow. We can turn on this daily link flow, and then you can take a preview of this step. So this way you can see what the bar might look like. If you want to adjust the min-max scaling, you can change that scaling over here. So if you want to have bars that are not as wide, you can decrease that maximum width and take a look again, and you'll see bars that are not as wide as you were looking at before, or you can have even wider bars and then change the bandwidth accordingly. So here again, you can classify these link bars. For the classification, you can check use classified mode. Click the filling over here, and that brings up another dialog for classification. Let's say you want to classify this by volume to capacity ratio. You can select classified display, select from these attributes the classification attribute, which in this case would be volume to capacity ratio over here, and then click OK. Now what you want to do is increase or add some more gradients in the color. So let's say we added a couple more classes over here, and then I named this class less than 25% congestion. Then I can have 50%, 75%, and then 75% and above. If you want to see one more classification, you can add 100, and that'll be the highest bar. You can name these bars in any custom way. So you can either have these same values copied over here, or you can type text over here, and so forth. So whatever you type over here will show up in the legend. Then you can set the colors for these. So I can set the color going from a lighter color to a darker color, or in this case, since I have a dark background, you can go from a darker color going into a lighter color. So this way you can set up your bar classification. Then you click OK. And then when I preview this, it'll show me a classified display of these bars. So the brighter bars over here are the ones that have a higher volume to capacity ratio, and then the bandwidth is scaled to the volumes. Over here in the legend, you can see that whatever I typed in the name over there appeared in the legend as is. So this way you can customize what you see in your legend settings as well. If you want difference bars, then instead of this standard display, you can go for difference bars and then plot the two difference attributes. So let's say I wanted to take the model volume minus a certain counted volume, and go over here and then put count, or this one, and then this will give me that difference. If you want to classify this by positive or negative, because some would be higher than the counts and some model volumes will be lower, then you can go back to this display over here. In this case, I just need two classes. I need one that's less than 0 and then the other one greater than 0. And here, I don't want the volume to capacity ratio, but what I want over here is the same scaling attribute. So I select like scaling attribute and then click OK. Now I need to color code this. So I can put one in, let's say, this greenish color, and another one in, let's say, this bright orange. And this way we have 2, and then you can give it the custom name. In one case, it would be model is low, or you can just say low and then say high. And this way you can have classified display, and you'll see over here various bars. Now, this difference is displayed for all of the bars. So if you want to filter out only the links that actually have a count associated with them, then you can set up a filter over here and have link counts greater than 1 and activate this filter. This way you'll see only relevant links in the calculation. Once you have done setting up a certain graphic parameter, you can save that graphic parameter, as we discussed earlier, by going to File and then Save As Graphics Parameters, and then giving it a certain name. If you have the directory set up for graphic parameters in your project directories, for example, over here in File Project Directories, I have graphic parameters pointed to this subdirectory over here. In that case, your results or your graphic parameter files can be directly looked up from this dialog box over here, or the folder over here. So that way, all of these graphics become available in this dropdown. And in this case, then you can even save this graphic by directly typing a name over here. So if I say base network diff, then it'll just save this graphic. Now, if I wanted to switch to another graphic, let's say traffic flows, then I can switch to that. I can turn the filter off over here to show the full traffic flows. And then I can also switch to transit flows in the same way. And in this case, what I have selected over here changes from this volume to the transit flow attribute. If you wanted to see both, you can check both of these on and then take a look at this graphic, which shows you both the traffic and transit flows. In addition to this, it's also possible to put an index over here or a legend, which you can toggle through this legend bar. We'll come back to this after we cover the next couple of slides. So another graphic that you typically want to look at with the results of the model is select link calculations. And select link flow bandwidth is available in Visum for both transit and traffic assignments. You can scale in the same way the select link as you scale your typical link flow bars. And then you can add also origin and destination pie charts in that listing. So this way, your zones are linked with the origins and destinations of the select link calculation. And then also you can see the link bars. So over here, you have this display which shows you the link flow bandwidth, and in addition, where the origins and destination of that particular link flow is going. These paths can also be seen in an interactive listing in Visum, since all of the paths are stored within the assignment. You can have a listing, as you can see over here, and scroll through and filter for different market segments that you've assigned. Now let's see how these work within Visum. So here, let me load my base network graphic first. To set up a link or select link graphic, we go for Graphics and Flow Bundle. That brings up this Flow Bundle tool over here. You can check Insert Link Bars if required, which means that when you run the select link, it'll automatically create the required link flow bar. So let's say I want to now select a certain link and do a select link calculation. So I can do this link and then run this select link calculation. So this auto generates a link bar for me, which shows you the flows for the select link. Now, if you wanted to look at, in addition to this, what origins and destinations are sending flows through this link, you can further go for Graphics, Edit Graphics, and then open up the zone-related graphics over here. Here, you can select first Draw Zones. And I don't have this over here selected with a symbol. I don't need a polygon. What I need in this case is actually the chart. So within the chart, you can select a pie chart, and then you can select the origin or destination traffic flow. So over here, I'm looking at origin or destination traffic flow for transit, but in this case, I want to look at the traffic flows. So I switch that to origin traffic flow for PRT. Click OK. Then destination traffic flow. Again, back to PRT. Click OK. And then let's take a preview. And that shows you then all of the flows originating and then ending at all of these purple points. Here you can see that your legend shows you the information related to this. Now let's say I wanted to change a few things in this legend. I can select legend over here and then add or remove the items that I need. I can change the layout or where this legend is placed. So let's say I wanted the legend bottom, then I can click that corner and bring it down over here. Then send it back up where it was. In the text layout, I can enter the name that I want in this chart. If you want a footer to be shown, this can be used for showing a footer. If I select Show Graphical Scale, then this way you can add a scale over here. Additionally, if you want to show the bandwidth scaling, you can select Show Bar Scaling, and that shows you a scaled bar. And this way you can add or remove any of the objects that are shown in the legend. So if I remove zones over here and only keep the link bars, then you can see that that zone data is gone. If I want to bring it back, I can just select zones over here, click this and then preview, and then that shows you what each of these color scheme means in this particular graphic. Now, if you wanted to look at the path data related to this select link calculation, you can go for PRT paths. And let's say you wanted to see SOV Then you can select SOV. This shows you by default all of the routes in this network. What we want is only the select link or flow bundle. So we select that, and that reduces the selection set. Now you can take a look at all of the routes within your flow bundle. Similarly, you can do a transit select link. So I go back to flow bundle over here, clear the existing calculation, and then instead of PRT, you can select PUT, which is a transit related select link. And let's say I click and then run this select link. It'll show me all of the transit related select link flows. Now to bring back the origin and destination related pie charts, you can go back to graphics. And here I had selected the PRT. So now instead of that, I reverse it back to PUT and then PUT for the destination. And then click OK. And then you can see where the transit flows are coming from and where they're destined. Similarly, if you wanted to do a select link or a select zone, it's supported in the same way. Now let's say I wanted to do a PRT select link or select zone. I can switch the network object to a zone, select a particular zone, let's say over here, this zone, run it, and that'll show you flows originating at this zone destined to various other zones. So the select link calculation is kind of an interactive querying in Visum once you've done the assignment and so forth. So it can be dynamically changed and results can be dynamically extracted without rerunning the traffic assignment. All right. Next item of interest from the traffic assignments is usually turning movement flows or turn volumes. These can be set up interactively in Visum again with the same graphics turn volumes menu. You can change various parameters on it. For example, the bandwidth scaling and such of the turns, which turns are visible, and then also plot it for export to, let's say, a reporting tool and such. Let's see how this works. Go back to Visum over here, and now I have a traffic assignment run on this network. So let's say you want to see turning movement volumes on a more zoomed in area over here. You can select the zooming tool, zoom in on a certain area, and let's say I wanted this intersection. You can go for graphics, turn volumes, and that brings up the turning movement menu. Then you can select this node over here, and that will populate it with the turning movement volume. Getting closer over here, you can see that these bandwidths are scaled to the volumes shown over here. Now again, you can change these graphics by going to graphic parameters, change the bandwidth in the same way that we had seen before. So if you wanted wider bars, then you can expand those bars and then click preview. So those bars become more exaggerated. Let's say I wanted even bigger bars. I can click preview to make those bars even more exaggerated. Further over here, you have some options. If you want to draw certain items or skip certain items from drawing, then you can check these. So let's say I click turn off draw bars. You'll see that there's no bandwidth, but only turning movement volumes shown. On the other hand, if I turn off the bar labels, you won't see any of the bar labels, but only the turning movement bandwidth. And then similarly, if you turn off this draw edges, it won't show you all of the turns, but only the ones that have a width. You can further tune these settings by checking the options over here for text positioning, overlap correction, and such. Over here, you can filter for incoming or outgoing volumes in the intersection. So here we are looking only at incoming. Volumes coming back into the approach. So this will flip the flow and you can see approach volumes coming out of the intersection. You can change also how you see this circle display. Let's say you click a smooth transition, then you can put some sort of shading over here. So these are all of the various parameters provided for making the charts look more graphically appealing and such. Turning off a turning movement flow, again, you just click on the turning movement flow and then it gets removed from the graphic. Now, this turning movement flow can also be seen in the junction editor. So if you click nodes and double click one of these nodes and select turn volumes over here, you can see that turning movement flow in this kind of a plot. This lets you then export this plot if you want to export a bunch of information for putting in a report or so forth. Now let's go back to our PowerPoint and cover the next topic. So another aspect for the legend that we discussed is you can customize the legend as you need by adding and removing the objects that are listed in the legend. And this has a generally similar workflow regardless of what type of plotting you're doing. It works in the same way. Then if you wanted to export your map to a bigger plot, let's say you have a plotter and you want to plot volumes or so forth, that can be done by using this print setting in Visum and then setting up your plot and then laying it out for a plotter. Again, as we discussed earlier, you can store these GPAs once you've set them. So this way you can apply these map templates to various different models that you're using. So the point over here is to store these templates and let you recycle them for various different models that you might be working on. And having to do the whole process of checking each and every little option in that graphic menu. All right, let's have a look at specifically the option on the plotting over here. So in this case, let's say we wanted to make a plot over here for the classified traffic flows. Then what you can do over here is either export the screen cap as a JPEG, where you can go for this screen cap icon and then say network flow is classified. Select the resolution, and then that exports the screen cap to a PNG or JPEG file. If you wanted to send this or set it up for plotting, then you can go for File, Print, and then go for Print options. Select the type of plotter you have, and based on that, you will see a different paper size over here. If you want to add some headers and so forth over here, you can click either a certain print area, or you can scale the drawing. There's also then the option of adding headers and footers. So let's say you wanted to add a header over here. You can check that, select this, and insert a header. You can also, in the same way, add a footer column. If you wanted to change some of the items in the page setup, landscape to portrait, all of these positioning options are available in this print menu. Once you've set these up, then when you print the drawing, you'll see that it can be scaled to larger plotter sizes and so forth. Now next, let's take a look at another way of looking at outputs in Visum, which is the tabular outputs. So this is accessed via the listings interface in Visum. The general way of working with listings is essentially the same workflow. You go for lists, select the type of listing or subclass of lists that you want. Let's say you want to take a look at a network, then you go for network and then select the sub-object from that network. So those could be nodes, links, turns, zones, and so forth. Once you're in the listing, then there is a select attribute menu where you can select what columns you want to see in the listing, and those can be added or removed based on your selection over here. And again, this workflow remains the same for all types of listings, where essentially you select the attribute that you want to look at in the listing and configure that layout. If you have a layout that you might use multiple models, then you can store that layout as a template or a LLAX file in Visum. Then similar to a map template, this file can also be loaded to load a preset layout view of the listing. In the same way that the graphics are available in a drop-down list, these LLAX files are also available in a drop-down list once you save them as the template. Typically, you'll be using these type of things, look at some things, let's say zonal outputs like production and attractions. So all of these types of outputs are visualized or accessed via the listing interface in Visum. Let's have a look at how this works within Visum. So now over here, I have my network. If I wanted to see a listing of link data on it, I can go for lists and then network, links. And here you can see by default various attributes are selected. Let's say I wanted only a few of these attributes. I can go for this attribute selection menu. This is here, select attributes, attribute selection, and then I might not want to keep some of these other items here. And let's say I remove all of these and only keep the traffic flows in there. So this is my daily flow, and then I have all of the other time periods. You can change the settings. So if you don't want to see the decimals, you can make all of those 0. And then once you click OK, you'll see only the list layout attributes that you selected. Now, as we discussed at an earlier time, you can group these attributes by the link type numbers and so forth. So let's say you wanted to classify this listing and then bring it in as classified by a certain functional type. Then what you can do is over here, go for select attributes and add that attribute for the functional type. So over here I have the F type attribute. Insert that in the listing, bring it up over here. And let's say I wanted to group these flows by facility type. Then I can check aggregate over here. And we want to sum up all of these flows by the facility type. Then I can click OK over here. And then what you get is kind of a pivot table type output that you can copy and paste in a report, or if you're just doing a simple check while calibrating your model, all of these options are available for you. So this is essentially summing up the flows. In the same way, you can sum up attributes like VMT, VHT, and so forth. If you want to save this listing layout, you can go for list and save layout. And then let's say call it link summary for volumes, and then save that LLA file, and that creates a template. Over here, for example, we have different templates. So now let's say I ungrouped this setting and then loaded this template again. It'll bring back what I had before. So this way you can have various different types of listings and layouts within Visum to visualize your outputs. On the zonal level, you can go for the zonal level listings in the same way by going to list, network, zones, and over here I have a few listings stored for the zone. So let's say you want to look at employment and school information, you can select that, and this layout gives you the attributes. So this is typically what you would see in that DBF file that you use for zonal inputs. In the same way, you can look at turn listings. You can go for list, network, turns, and then all of the turn volumes are stored over here. And you can select any one of these turns, group these by node and so forth. And this gives you access to turning movement volumes. All right, next take a look at another tabular output in Visum. This is for skim classification or trip length distribution. Over here, what we do is select the trip matrix to classify using the histogram interface. And then we set the classification or skim matrix by which we want to classify the trip table. Then we set the intervals or bins for that classification. And then we just recalculate that classification to give us this type of a chart. Let's have a look at this in Visum to get a better idea of how the workflow is. So I go back to Visum. I have a set of matrices over here. Now let's say I wanted to look at the trip length distribution for HPCU. I can select that, right click, and then select Create Histogram. This gives me some sort of default view, which is not very useful. So now I want to classify this by the skim matrix. Over here, first I'll get rid of these two intervals, go for View Options, use Classification Matrix. Over here, I'd like to use a skim matrix, so I use the distance matrix. Click OK. 0 is good enough over here, and then click OK again. Now I'd like to enter my intervals. So for that, say insert new intervals, upper limit of 60 miles, let's say, and then 12 of these. Now let's click OK over here and then reclassify. So that gives me now a trip length distribution chart. This trip length distribution chart again can be copied and pasted. So this way you're able to transfer this data into an Excel spreadsheet. And if you want to analyze this further, you can do that, or you can put this in a report. All right. Another useful output is for network assignments. Over here, you can look at the gap in convergence quality for the network assignments once you run them. This is available in the statistics view, and then you can look at information related to your traffic assignment gap or the detail for the assignment in transit path or traffic assignment path data. You can also create scatter plots, and then you can also look at line loadings for your transit lines. So let's have a look at this particular scatter chart and so forth within Visum and how that looks. So if you want now the network assignment quality or information on convergence and so forth, you can go for List, Statistics, PRT assignment quality data, and that will give you for each demand segment iteration all of the information on average excess cost, total excess cost, and the gap. Again, this listing, you can set up the layout as you like. So let's say you only wanted total excess cost and the gap. You can set it up like that. And in the default form, it won't show you the exp. So this way you can take and copy this gap calculation and so forth and put it in a chart if you have that sort of a requirement for reporting the gap. You can also look at what happened with the transit assignment in the same way with statistics, PUT assignment statistics. Here it'll show you all of the information related to the transit assignment, your mean journey time, mean in-vehicle time, and mean number of transfers and so forth. So this gives you a general idea of how your transit assignment worked out and the quality of that connection choice and so forth. Again, related to transit, if you want to look at line loadings, you can go for lines and then right click, go for list and then lines. Over here, you can set up this line listing table to show you the line loading. So I have a template saved over here. It says line loading, and this shows you the trips or loading on each line in the transit system. We also have the scatter chart in Visum, where in the procedures, you can add what we call this assignment analysis. So this is again part of the assignments submenu. And once you insert this and you look at the parameters for this, you can set up the model attribute, the observed value or the count. You can set up certain filters for the calculation. You can set up what you want to classify this by. This can be done for different network objects. So depending on what you're trying to validate with the flows, you can select your network object and set it up accordingly. And then in the tolerances, you can insert the tolerances based on the observed flows. Typical tolerances are based on this NCHRP guidance on ADTs or hourly flows. So once you've set this up, you can run this assignment analysis over here. And then you can have a look at graphics or calculate assignment analysis and then chart. And this will show you the chart with all of the root mean square error and so forth. Now, one more aspect of it is exporting this information from your model to outputs that come out of, let's say, a CAN reporting system. A common one these days is to use Jupyter Notebooks to process and display your data outputs. So you can export the data generated within Visum to tables and then use Jupyter Notebooks to create customized reporting charts and such. So the usual way to do that is once the calculation in Visum is done through the Python interface, export the tables that you'd like to view within a Jupyter report, and then write on the Jupyter notebook the kind of information that you want to process. For this, a typical interface that I typically like to use is the Visual Studio Code because it has the support for Jupyter Notebooks built in. And then Visum ships with the Pandas Python library. So when you install Visum and it installs the Python copy on your computer, it'll also install the Pandas library within Python. And that's a pretty handy library for all of this kind of data analysis, working with data frames and so forth. That's commonly used with the Jupyter notebooks. So as I said, you can use the Jupyter notebooks within the VS Code editor, and that typically gives you a good place to look at your charts and so forth. You can use any other environment of choice for Jupyter that you like, so it's not a fixed environment. So if you are comfortable with something else, you can use that. With that, let's take a look at what this Jupyter notebook looks like once it's exported. So the general workflow over here, let me point it, is when I run the calculations over here, after each of the calculations is run, you can see that a little summary script export the tables required for generating that Jupyter Notebook outputs. So those summaries are going into this summary table over here, and all of this data is pushed out into a CSV file for all of these different market segments and such. This data can now then be loaded into the Jupyter Notebook and visualized and charted as you need. So with this example of Jupyter, what we are doing is we are taking one of those segments over here with the trip generation CSV and the trip length distribution and mode split, and then we load these into data frames, create some charts with the matplotlib, and then when you run this notebook, you'll have charts like this, which are typically put in reports and so forth. And these would be your trip length distribution chart. Then you can have your mode choice pies, or you can have a mode choice diagram like this. You can have some tabulated outputs like this in Jupyter. And then again, the assignment validation over here can provide you with this sort of scattergram with the R-square and other measures tabulated. You can also do the same sort of summary or grouping of link level VMTs based on the facility type. And it's again the same sort of group by statement given in pandas. So this way you can export data from Visum and create customized reporting and charting as needed if you have a specific workflow that's asked for from the model validation point of view. So with this, we'll end this session over here today.